Hey everyone, welcome to the Pitt Mailbag Show here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. We're your hosts, Chris Carter, Stephen Thompson, your Pitt beat reporters, for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. As always, you can find this show every Tuesday answering your questions on your Pitt Panthers here on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of the daily content that comes out from all of the Pittsburgh sports writers here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Stephen, it's basketball season. We are recording this Monday afternoon. Tonight, we are headed to the Peterson Event Center for Pitt's opening game against Radford. Lots of excitement there, but of course, football is still on the minds of many Pitt fans after a disappointing loss this weekend. The Panthers only dropped to 23, though, so they're still a ranked team, and a lot of people want to know about that 7-1 Pitt football team. So we start there with our first question. All of our questions coming from Twitter. Shout out to all you Twitter folks there, keeping the email questions at bay. But KG asks on Twitter, what do you see as Pitt football's biggest issue right now, and can it be corrected? Stephen, you were there live to cover Pitt's loss to SMU. What is the biggest thing, and can it be corrected?
Yeah, and in my mind, I think you throw out a lot of what went wrong down at SMU. I mean, in that game individually, it was the tackling, it was the defense giving up so many rushing yards, so many big plays. But over the past 3 weeks and really back towards the beginning of the season, I would say the offensive line is my biggest concern right now. Some guys have improved. Ryan Baer, I think, really struggled to start the year and has looked better over the past few weeks. But the depth, I think, is a real issue. You start to think about Branson Taylor being down for the year and Terrence Enos needing to step into his place. Not enough of these guys are playing at elite levels or at good enough levels even, I would say. And there aren't many upgrades available on the roster. I mean, I don't know if there's anyone that you could pick off the bench to say that guy is going to step up and make an improvement to this roster immediately. Either they're really young or they're veterans who haven't been able to break through yet, which is never really a great sign. Maybe Jason Collier Jr. can be a guy like you for that, but I'm not exactly counting on it. I think between the depth and, the performance of the starters, the offensive line is the biggest concern to me. It's really affected how Eli Holstein has played, which is maybe your next biggest concern. But I think Eli's struggles are a little bit more rooted in how the offensive line is played. SMU was able to get home with 4 guys on just about every play. They barely had to blitz to get pressure on Eli against last Saturday.
And so I'll go with the Eli Holstein route here. Look, the offensive line needs to be better. The tackling needs to be better, but there are also times when I think Eli Holstein has to see the field better. And I think part of what the problem is that teams are dropping 7 into coverage. And that can be, if you're able to drop 7 into coverage, then it's going to take a smart quarterback to see the field and dissect what's going on there when you're facing a 4-man rush. Now, when the 4-man rush is held back, you still need to capitalize on it. And to me, that's where the biggest problem for Pitt is. Eli Holstein has not been the big playmaker that he was in the first 5 weeks of the season. Now, part of it is I think teams are adjusting to what he does. Pat Narduzzi talked about this on the Monday press conference. He said how teams are adjusting to what they're not doing what they normally do when we play them. And I think it's because they're saying, hey, the big threat of Pitt's offense right now with Eli Holstein is either when he hits a big play or he uses his legs to create. So here's what we're going to do. We're not going to run man because when you run man, our backs are to the quarterback and we can't stop it. We can't stop him as easily. So they're switching to zone, and you're going to mix up your zone coverages and force him to have to read where the zones are and slow down his processing and hope that our defensive front can take advantage of Pitt's offensive front. That's a sound system for a defense to play this team. Now it's just about how can Pitt counter that, because now that teams are doing this, what ways can you get some mismatches and some miscommunications that design up easier throws for Eli Holstein that get this offense in rhythm? And can that be corrected and fixed? I think so. I think Eli Holstein has the gusto to come out and make big plays, but it's going to be about getting him to read the right keys. And that's going to be a challenge for Cade Bell, this offensive staff, Pat Narduzzi, everyone involved, to make sure that Eli Holstein is headed in the right direction moving forward. If he does not, it could make for a really rough end to this season that has started out so promising. And I maintain this too. I think there's people out there that are like, oh, this season's a waste. It's done. It's over. And I'm not saying that the college football playoffs are a thing that they can do right now. And that certainly was on their that was more of a real potential for them before this game. But the Panthers are 7-1 this year. I was considered an optimist for saying they'd win 7 games at all this season. And so I think we'd only get to, this strong start being spoiled if they don't end up with at least 9 or 10 wins at the end of the season. Because here's the other thing, Steven. they play right now. They play 2 ranked teams in the ACC. Now, them rankings might change later on, but Louisville and Clemson are still on the schedule, and if they're ranked when Pitt plays them, those are 2 other opportunities to show, hey, had a rough night, but that does not define our season. Just like they're trying to show, had a rough year last year, that does not define the program.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, look, Miami has proven to be a little bit vulnerable over the past few weeks, and SMU certainly hasn't been impervious either. So they're going to need some help, but these Panthers could still find their way back to the ACC championship game. A playoff bid looks a little bit out of a little bit further from their reach right now, but there were a lot of unhappy people after that football game on Saturday, and for good reason. But at the end of the day, you're still 7-1, and even a blown opportunity like that, there's still more down the road for you. So no reason to give up on this season at all. I think they have a lot of potential still left in them, and they did a lot of good work in the first half of the season to get themselves to this point, and there's still opportunities left on the table, like you said.
Agree entirely. We will see how things continue for them moving forward. But a big question that was asked of Pat Narduzzi that some people are asking right now after the Panthers' first loss. This one comes from C. Michael. How close are we to seeing Eli Holstein being benched? Steven,
you take this one, Chris, because I think this one's pretty easy to answer.
Yeah, I'd say not close because they've lost 1 game. And look, Eli Holstein has not. I don't think he's had good games for three straight appearances. However, he's a redshirt freshman quarterback. He's the team is 7-1. I don't think you just bench that guy for his backup at the first sign of trouble. That's not how you show strength. That's not how you balance things out. And look, I'm the first person to say, I've been saying for weeks now, Eli Holstein is struggling seeing the field. Even when they were winning, even before the Cal game, when they were moving the ball, I'm like, I don't trust a few things here. I think there's a few things that he's missing in his processing, and he's just hitting on some big plays here. And he needs to grow past that. But you don't get better at that by benching him. You get better at that by forcing him to improve each week, challenging him each week. And that's what Cade Bell's trying to do right now with Pitt's offense. So, it was asked of Pat Narduzzi, and he said, I can't believe someone would ask that question at this point. Now, he was saying that kind of friendly, in a friendly, tongue-in-cheek form to Jerry DePaula, who asked that question of the Trib. But, to me, I think that there's also a merit. Like he's trying to back up his quarterback right now. His quarterback had a rough outing. He hasn't been good for 3 straight games, and he's trying to put it out there like, hey, I still believe in Eli Holstein. I don't care what anybody says. And that's what head coaches need to do, especially in today's world of college football, where players feel like their coaches don't have them. They'll hit the transfer portal real fast, no matter how much you're paying them. So I don't think there's any chance we see Eli Holstein get benched at least this week. He would need to have a 3-interception, 4-interception type game for them to, I think, to consider going in that route.
Right, and kind of bridging our last question, to this one. Narduzzi sees Eli as a long-term investment, like he should.
Yeah.
As much as people want this to be kind of the special year for Pitt football, think about a lot of the guys that are eligible to come back next year. As good as they are this year, they can be even better next year. And it's going to start and end with what Eli Holstein's able to do at quarterback. Quarterback really determines, what your ceiling and your floor is or your ceiling, I guess, more than your floor for a college football team. So, letting Eli develop, knowing that his coaches believe in him, that's the only thing I'll add. That's really the biggest thing, biggest reason why Holstein isn't getting benched. If he's struggling, he's got to be able to work through those struggles with his coaches and with his teammates.
Agreed. And I think that if Pitt wants to see him improve, you got to let him fight through it. And if he improves through it, great. And if he doesn't, well, we see we'll see where that lies. But you got to give him those chances. With that being said, let's move on to some Pitt basketball questions because basketball season is here again. We are recording this before Pitt's opening game at Radford. So we're going to take these questions as more of like preseason questions. This one comes from Matthews, who asks, 1 second, let me get it. There we go. How many players do you guys think Pitt basketball's rotation will be this season, assuming everyone is healthy? Steven, we've been talking about how deep this team could be. How many players do you think Jeff Capel regularly uses this year?
Yeah, I think especially during the non-conference schedule, he'll go as deep as 10. I can name them all for you. Obviously, Jalen Lowe, Leggett, Zach Austin, Cam Corrin and Guillermo Diaz-Graham that look like your starting five that we'll see in that Radford game. But then you got Damian Dunn and you got Nelly, Brandin Cummings, Papa Conte, Amzal Dalalik, and even I think you and I would both throw Jorge Diaz-Graham in there as maybe kind of a 10th guy. So regularly, I would assume they'd go as deep as 10 in the non-conference schedule. It'll get cut down as guys kind of earn more minutes and guys fall out of favor throughout the season. And when games get more important, it'll get even tighter than that, maybe down to 7 or 8. But for right now, I think they can go as deep as 10 and feel really comfortable about those 10.
Yeah, I think so too. That's my number right now. It's 10 players. Like you said, the starting five, presumably Jalen Lowe, Ishmael, Leggett, Zach Austin, Guillermo Diaz-Graham, Cam Corrin. There's your five. Your first get 5 guys off the bench. Brandin Cummings, Damian Dunn at the guard position, Amsel Dalalik as a forward, Jorge as a forward, and then Papa Conte as your sort of center / other big that you're rotating in there. And really both the Twins and Papa Conte, I think, could be the guys that rotate around a little bit to help be guys in the paint for Cam Corrin. But 10 players as in a Pitt rotation, Steven, I don't think we've seen that too often. I mean, you think back to even the 2022-2023 year when they made the tournament, I think they really played most of that season with 8 or 9 guys. When you think back on, the people that they really trusted to be on the court, that could go a lot for spreading guys out, giving them good minutes and not tiring them out so fast in games.
And really the biggest 2 questions I think are, Jorge Diaz-Graham at the bottom there, can he be the shooter that Jeff Capel thinks that he is? Can he be a defender at 6'11" or 7 foot? And then also Brandin Cummings, you never know with a true freshman. He's looked really good so far, but just how does he stand up to real Division I level competition in game action? Like I said, he's looked really good, looked up to the task. I have high expectations. So do a lot of other people, which we're going to get to actually in a later question. But those are the kind of the 2 biggest questions that'll determine if Pitt can actually go 10 deep is how well those guys play.
Absolutely. Let's keep it moving here. Connor asks, Nelly Cummings was a big-time shot maker 2 years ago. Is Brandin Cummings that person this season, or is someone else? Steven, I mean, here's the thing. One, Nelly Cummings did make big shots. I felt like the real big shot guy was Jamarius Burton. I think that was the guy that they relied on to be more clutch that season. But Nelly Cummings did make some big shots, no doubt. Brandin Cummings putting that on a true freshman is a lot right away. Mm-hmm. I also think that there's some big shot makers that are on this team from last year in Ishmael, Leggett, and Jalen Lowe. I think either of those guys could be the guys that end up taking those big shots this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd even throw Damian Dunn in there. I think it could be kind of a situation where, Guillermo Diaz-Graham is a starter, but Damian Dunn could be a closing lineup guy.
There you go.
Again, we're going to bring up Dunn. I'm going to bring up Dunn at least in a later question as well. But those guys, those 3 guards, Dunn, Lowe, and Leggett, all seem like really big clutch shot makers. Lowe, I think mostly back to that Duke game, which was kind of Pitt's coming out party last year. The way Lowe hit those big shots really in the closing minutes, but the way Ishmael Leggett in that Duke game and in a bunch of other really important games in ACC play kept Pitt afloat or halted another team's momentum with a really tough bucket, usually driving towards the rim against an opposing big man. Like that was super impressive. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that from Ish Leggett without Blake Hinson taking up a huge volume of the shots. He's going to really flourish. And in the clutch, I would expect to find one of those 3 guys with the ball in their hand when the game's on the line.
I agree. And I think that's a really good thing, is to have multiple options for big name shooters, because then you can force defenses to have to honor so much and then set up a play that gets a guy free for an open shot. Whereas, if you have one playmaker like that on that final inbound, when you're looking for the big shot in the big minute or the big drive to the basket, if they can crowd one guy and know that you don't trust other guys, that can be the problem that you run into. But having multiple guys, being that guy, I think that could go a long way this season if they want to be a big team. Lastly, we get a question from this guy. I don't know who this person is. They're really random, creepy in the comments. They are Mr. Noah Hiles. I don't know where this guy came from. Must have been all over the Blue Vases or whatever. But anyways, we know Noah Hiles. We love that guy. Pitt Hoops has had back-to-back ACC 6th Man of the Year playoffs and Nike Sibande, or players, in Nike Sibande and Ishmael Leggett. Which player has the best odds to win that this year? Steven, you've been teasing this answer all show, so I'll let you answer.
Yeah, I think it's Damian Dunn. Man, that guy can score. He has experience. Kind of fits the mold, I think, of both Leggett and Sibande. I think, if we're right and Guillermo Diaz-Graham does end up being that fifth starter, which I think he deserves, and I think is a really great fit in that starting lineup, you might still get a lot of done in those final minutes when the game really matters and in those closing lineups. So I'm a big fan of Dunn. I think he can do a lot of the same things that both Sibande and Leggett did. I mean, he might be their best perimeter defender if Leggett isn't again this year. But he can also get you a tough bucket. He can score on his own. I think he could carry a bench lineup with his scoring as well, because he's kind of been there and done that way back in his years at Temple. So my money's on Dunn if I had to pick anyone.
I think that's where my money is too. Damian Dunn is going to be the guy that they want to bring in to change the pace, be a tough guy who makes the strong decisions in the right moments. And I think that's a good thing to have. They got a young guy in Jalen Lowe. They got a young guy in Brandin Cummings. Then they have two old guys in Dunn and Leggett that they can pace things out with. So be on the lookout for Damian Dunn as your sixth man of the year in the ACC. Can they get 3 straight? We'll see there. But hey, we hope everyone enjoyed the Pitt Mailbag Show. We had a lot of questions. Thank you to everyone who asked questions here on the Pitt Mailbag Show for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter, Stephen Thompson. We'll see you again later this weekend when we're doing our Pitt post-game show after Pitt football takes on 4-4 Virginia at Acrisure Stadium. Can the Panthers bounce back on the gridiron? We'll find out this weekend here on the Pitt Mailbag Show. Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.